It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the CFPs on the program. And with me in the KFG studios, my fellow CFPs and friends, not in that order, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
If you have an HSA, you're probably already aware of the two traditional methods of contributing to that account. That's out of your paycheck and out of pocket. But did you know that there's also some other more creative ways to contribute? We're going to unpack those for you on today's episode of the Wise Money Show.
That's right. Getting geeky. We love it. We love it. If you have a question for the program, we would love to hear from you. If you have any needs or just, have any concerns about your own situation, we're here to help as well. Call or text 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyshow.com is where you can find us. And also submit questions that way. And then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Search The Wise Money Show. HSA, I was just sharing before we started recording. I'm getting old. And I remember teaching the HSA concept to a local business, to this small employer. They had, 10 employees. And I remember teaching it way back in the day and having them just look at me like I was an absolute idiot. I don't want this high deductible health plan. Why are you trying to tell me about these tax benefits? Give me the insurance that the teachers have. That's they didn't say that, but they said it with their eyes. Like that is what I was interpreting. And now here we are, fast forward, and the HSA is almost like a premium feature now. There's more and more high deductible health plans out there that are not HSA eligible.
Right.
And so getting the HSA, having the option of having an HSA, yeah, that'd be sweet. But truthfully, it is a pretty unbelievable tax benefit. So we're going to talk about some unique funding strategies, but let's at least share, how does the HSA even work?
So, an HSA is a type of a savings account that lets you set aside money on a pre-tax basis for qualified medical expenses. That's the 30-second definition that you wanted, Mike. And it doesn't really, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I can't tell you how many times I've asked someone, they were talking about health insurance, and I said, what type of health insurance do you have? And they say, I have an HSA. No, that actually is not the type of health insurance that you have.
If you want to make someone mad, that should be your response. No, excuse me, sir. That is not an HSA plan.
No.
That's a high deductible health plan.
But the fun thing about kind of geeking out is we get to have our own little pet peeves. Like if someone,
an IRA. Okay. An
No,
IRA.
Kevin's pet peeve is going to a conference and having someone say that they're a financial planner, only to find out that they really just sell annuities for a bank or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And he calls them out every single time. I love that about Kevin.
Gosh.
Or
never let one of those slide by.
I know. Or to hear that, someone's like the endorsed, favorite firm of a local university, and realize all these guys are doing is selling annuities.
Yeah, right.
So that's a little.
You're on a mission to correct everyone's language, aren't you?
I really am, and
So it's not an HSA that you have. It's a high deductible plan that happens to be HSA eligible.
Correct.
Right.
So if it's HSA eligible, that means that I can therefore fund an HSA account. And so,
do I need to correct you right now? Your health savings account?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So
good.
I can fund that, and so there are various limits, and there's a limit whether I'm single or married, and if I'm before 55 or after 55.
And it's also triple tax qualified.
That's exactly where I wanted to go as well.
Triple tax benefit where others are typically just 2 tax benefits or maybe 1. But
yeah, this is why it's one of our favorite tax shelters that exists out there. It's one of the tools that your certified financial planner can help you really impact your tax picture, set you up for long-term growth potentially in an account. But when we say triple tax benefit, we're saying the contributions that you make give you a tax savings. The growth in the account doesn't get taxed. And then it's tax-free when it comes out as long as you use it for qualified medical expenses. 3 times, basically for the life of those dollars, from the time you earned them and contributed them, the time you let it grow, and the time you eventually use it to help with medical expenses, it's never taxed.
It's one of the only tools in the tax code that you have that benefit, that triple tax benefit. So we're going to talk about some unique funding strategies, if you will, some advanced funding strategies. But we don't want that to overshadow our favorite funding strategy for most of you, and that is contributing out of your paycheck. Now, as Josh mentioned, the traditional ways to contribute to your HSA is either out of your paycheck or out of your pocket. But of the two, out of your paycheck, if you're able to do that, offers an additional tax benefit.
That's right, because when you contribute to your HSA out of your paycheck, your employer's withholding that or withdrawing that out of your wages and setting it aside into the HSA for you, you get not only federal income tax savings and state and local income tax savings, you also save on FICA tax or payroll taxes, as we would often say. So 7.65% of each paycheck that you earn from your employer it is taxed. This is how you pay into the Medicare system, into Social Security, that sort of thing. And it's happening out of every paycheck, whether you give attention to it or not. But the HSA, to my knowledge, it's the only thing that you can contribute to that goes in before that FICA tax is calculated for you. Mm-hmm. So you're saving 3 types of taxes now. Again, federal, state and local, and then the FICA tax.
Now, you're giving something up as well. And for most financial advisors, for most individuals, what you give up is not much. It's not worth giving up the benefit for this. But just to point it out, some people have gotten very frustrated when you point this out, and that is if that money that you're contributing to your HSA right out of your paycheck is pre-FICA, then that means that income is not counting in your Social Security calculation. Okay, if you're not paying in on the, let's say $6,000 that you contribute into your HSA out of your paycheck, if that you're not paying Social Security tax on, then it's not counting towards your earnings in your Social Security calculation. I don't think that's going to make a significant difference in your calculation, though.
Nope.
So just be aware of that. All right. So if you have the option contributing out of your paycheck, small business owners, greater than 2% shareholder. Yeah. Oftentimes we're the bearer of bad news, because as they come into our office and we're looking and saying, "Oh, you're funding your HSA out of your paycheck," that technically is not allowed because you're an owner in this company.
Yeah, well, our system of voluntary compliance, that voluntary compliance may not be so voluntary after these 89,000 agents go through their years of training on how to find these things. But I mean, the complying with the tax code, even people that want to struggle to get it right. So you just have to know what the rules are. And there's nothing logical about the rules.
Yeah, and don't hear us say that, if you're an employer, if you're an owner of a business, you can't contribute to an HSA at all. We're just saying that you can't use the paycheck method that your employees are allowed to. You still have the ability to contribute out of pocket, as we would say, or basically taking dollars that you've already received, you've got maybe sitting in another bank account, you can transfer that, write a check into whatever kind of deposit you need to make, but take those dollars and contribute a lump sum or a periodic sum. And that's how you can fund your HSA. You're still allowed to contribute the maximum amount. If you're an individual, what is it, $3,850 this year?
Yes.
And it's $7,750 if you're a family.
Yep. And for businesses, just real quick before we get into the 4 different advanced and unique funding strategies, the thought is, if you were paying or contributing to your HSA right out of your paycheck, again, that benefit is you not only save federal and state and local taxes, but you also save FICA taxes. But if you're an S-corp owner, or then the profits from your business also you don't pay self-employment tax or FICA tax on as well. So essentially, you could, by default, receive the same benefit, by lowering your salary $6,000 or $7,750, lowering your salary by that much, taking it as a distribution of the profits, and you'll achieve the same benefit. We've talked about this before because as we've shared this bad news with small business owners, they tend to feel like, I'm getting taken advantage of. And I think the tax rule was written this way because no, not really. Not really. So, okay, so what are the 4 unique funding strategies on top of the contributing right out of your paycheck? We've got that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show. What you're watching right now is our weekly 1-hour talk show that airs right here on this channel, 10 a.m. Eastern Time every Saturday morning, and also on podcast at the same time. It's broken up the way that it is and structured with this length because it's also on a couple of local radio stations as well. However, also on this channel, you're going to see lots of content, next wise step videos that air all throughout the work week, taking one financial concept, applying it directly to your financial life. That's more, 8, 10, 12 minutes long as well, made just for YouTube. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications if you like the content. Like the content, we appreciate it. All righty. Let's get into it. So the spousal catch-up contribution. I just am going to go out on a limb and say this is dumb. This is a dumb rule. It does not make sense.
And what is it that distinguishes this from the rest of the rules, Mike? Seriously. This is a dumb rule in a sea of really smart ones. My word. Yeah. Come on. Come on, Bernard. Were you interested in learning about your family crest? Jeez.
From the moment that I learned about this, I remember thinking, what? Why would you do that? Why would they make it this way? Yeah. It doesn't make any sense to me, but anyway. All right. Here we go.
I'm sensing a rant coming on.
No. It just got that little burst out, so I'm good now.
Keep your rants on.
All right. Do you have a qualifying high-deductible health plan where you can fund an HSA? If so, what are some of the unique or advanced funding strategies you should be considering? We're hitting that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn, Josh Gregory as well. Stay up to date on all Wise Money content. Find us online, wisemoneyshow.com, and then all over social media, wherever you're at. We are there as well. Search the Wise Money Show. All right, so we've defined an HSA. Who has it, who doesn't? I don't have the percentages here, but my guess is it's a larger percentage of the population that has an HSA-eligible high-deductible health plan today versus 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And if you have if you're funding an HSA, if you're eligible, what are some of the advanced funding strategies you should consider? Well, the first one is related to the catch-up contribution. Now, we need to explain how the catch-up contribution works with HSAs because they obviously would make it different than how catch-up contributions work for IRAs and 401ks. But the specific funding strategy, unique funding strategy, is the spousal catch-up contribution for those of you that are married and have a family health plan. So let's first talk about just how the catch-up contribution works. With IRAs, 401ks, the year you turn age 50, that's when you're allowed to do the extra catch-up contribution. Not so with an HSA.
That's right. You have to be 55.
Why? It doesn't make sense. Josh, you said you're feeling a rant. I was just waiting.
That's right. You're ready to pounce, aren't you?
Oh, my goodness. Why?
Who knows? Like, why can't there be consistency in the tax code? These are important life questions to ponder.
I think it should have been 55 and a half.
Oh, my goodness. My ears are bleeding. Just will someone write in
the year following the year in which you turn 55 and a half?
So will someone write in and give me a logical reason why Congress would have considered this, would have made this rule instead of age 50? Because I haven't found one.
Reach out to your congressman.
Yeah, there you go.
Go straight to the source.
So at age 55, that's when you're allowed to do the catch-up contribution to the HSA. So specifically the spousal catch-up. So why is this a unique strategy? How do these rules work?
Well, it's an interesting one that can create some problems for some people if you don't know the mechanics of of how to pull this off, especially if you have a family health insurance plan in place. We just got done saying earlier in the last episode that the contribution limit to an HSA for a family is $7,750.
Mm-hmm.
If you're over age 55, then you're allowed to contribute an extra $1,000. The problem is if you are the spouse that is carrying that coverage, you're the one that's working for the employer that's providing the group plan, and you have the insurance is in your name, so to speak, then the health insurance savings account, the HSA itself, is also in your name. And the full family contribution can go into that account in your name. Except the $1,000 catch-up for your spouse has to go into their own HSA.
And I think this doesn't make any sense, guys. And it's so irritating that it is set up this way. But your health insurance plan is a family plan, but your HSA is individual. I think that's the best way that I can apply some logic to it. Your HSA is individual. Now, so here's in practice how this would work. Is if you have an HSA eligible high deductible health plan, family coverage, and the employee, the individual who has the health insurance benefits is the primary, they've got the HSA plan, they can contribute the $7,750 maximum annual contribution to that plan. Then they can put in their own $1,000 catch-up contribution. So they can contribute a total of $8,750 into that HSA. The spouse then, who also needs to be age 55 or older, can then go open up their own HSA somewhere else, at a bank, at an investment firm, wherever, and contribute an extra $1,000 into that. Therefore, total contributions, $9,750.
But 1,000 of it in this straggler account separate from everything else. It's illogical. It's inconsistent. We often think of an HSA almost like an IRA for your medical expenses. But they didn't follow the IRA rules, where each spouse could have just had their own, and all of each spouse's contributions could have gone into their own. But it is what it is. The reason that this creates confusion, though, is if you and your certified financial planner discuss how to max out the HSA and you're over age 55, then what did you say? $9,750? $9,750 is the maximum contribution. But you've got to get the logistics right. Otherwise, you're going to go down to your local bank and they're going to tell you, no, you can only contribute $8,750.
Or worse, they let you contribute that much, and then you go to do your taxes and they don't let you deduct all of it. And now you've got an excess contribution that could have penalties if you don't withdraw the dollars. So I have gone to, this was years ago, gone to the bank to fund my HSA, and had them tell me that I'm not able to contribute as much as I was able to. And I knew the rules very clearly, what the limit was. I'm nothing against banks or the great folks that work there, but they don't, I'm assuming they don't do tax planning at all. And therefore, knowing some of these rules to be able to guide you to make sure you don't make a mistake or make sure that you optimize it, I don't think that's their role.
That's right. It's your certified financial planner's role to help you know the rules and how to implement it well so that it's consistent with your overall financial plan.
Yeah, I mean, what the folks at the bank or the credit union will or will not allow you to do is not connected to the rules at all. Because I had some clients come in and they were 67, they were on Medicare, and they said, well, yeah, we funded the HSA this year when we went to the bank. And I said, well, you guys are on Medicare. You can't fund it. And they're like, oh, yeah, they let us.
Right.
And I'm like,
no. Unfortunately, you can't.
No.
Right. So you go back to your voluntary compliance because all of this is now entangled with your taxes. And, So, all right. So that's the first creative funding strategy, is that catch-up contribution specifically for your spouse. Second, advanced or complicated funding strategy for your HSA, on the surface sounds amazing. When you actually understand the rules, it is it loses its luster, okay? And that is funding your HSA from your IRA. Now, who wouldn't want to do this? I've got my IRA where I've contributed pre-tax. It's growing tax sheltered, and when I withdraw the dollars, I'm going to have to pay tax on it. Well, certainly I'm going to withdraw some dollars for medical expenses out there in the future. So I just want to move some of this IRA money, at least the money that I'm going to use for medical expenses, over to my HSA. And that way, I'll be able to withdraw the money tax-free. So a very appealing idea, right?
That's right. You would move a bunch of money,
Absolutely.
wouldn't you?
Yeah.
To plan ahead for medical expenses in retirement, let the money grow tax-free, as we said. We said that an HSA is triple tax benefited. You don't pay tax on the contributions, you don't pay tax on the growth, and you don't pay tax when you pull it out for medical expenses. So why wouldn't you want to use IRA dollars? Well, Congress basically gave you a little bit of a benefit when they introduced this rule. They said that, first of all, you're only allowed to do this once in your lifetime.
Yep.
Not real helpful. Also, you're not allowed to just choose the dollar amount, an unlimited amount, to move from your IRA to the HSA. You're still limited in that year that you make this transfer. And it has a name, by the way, if you wanted to look this up. It's a qualified HSA funding distribution, kind of a mouthful. Okay, that's the type of distribution you're taking out of your IRA. And it's what allows this to not be a taxable event for you, ultimately, if you do it right. But the issue is, when you fund this, when you make the transfer, you're limited to whatever the maximum contribution was for that year for you.
So in this year, $7,750. If you're age 55 or older, then you could do $8,750. But that's the limit. So you can only do this once in your life, and you can only do up to that limit.
And it's combined with what you've already contributed, maybe out of your paycheck, and what your employer already contributed.
So there's that triple catch right there, because if you look and say, well, all right, I will do this 1 year. Well, that means you can't contribute to your HSA out of your pocket. Therefore, you can't get that tax deduction, which is so beneficial. Or if your employer is contributing to your HSA, you need to reduce how much you could contribute to your HSA from your IRA. This once in a lifetime, it would need to be reduced to account for that. So it sounds so amazing. We get this question a lot. In reality, in practice, it's not as great as you want it to be.
It's horrible.
When should you consider it? And then what are some other funding strategies? We've got that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
So you're wanting to pick back up with that.
Yeah, I think having a discussion about, because I do.
What would you use it for?
I do think there are people that should do it that don't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the question is,
do the HSA transfer option.
I mean, think about all the clients you have right now that don't have an IRA because they're doing backdoor.
yeah,
And so, I mean, I guess if there's any good news about that, you're waiting until the end of your career. You've rolled your 401k over to an IRA. I just can't get excited about
they took all the goodness away.
Yeah, the details that are this intricate and complex once.
Yeah,
Like, I don't want to, if I have to get this smart, I don't want to get this smart once.
yeah.
I want to get this smart for something I do every day.
All right, third segment, and we'll get into the not so creative but wildly beneficial to most people third funding strategy as well. We might get into shoeboxing, or that'll be the fourth segment. So, all right, here we go. Have an HSA. How are you funding it? And are you maximizing? Are you optimizing how to use that creative financial instrument in your financial life? We're helping you with that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode, as well as a lot of other content, is on the Wise Money YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there, turn on notifications so you're aware every time we drop new content, where we drop this talk show that airs once a week, but then lots of other content all throughout the work week as well. Over 1,000 videos on the YouTube channel, so go check that out. Go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show. Talking about advanced funding strategies with the HSA. First one that we hit was the weird rules around catch-up contributions, but specifically the advanced funding strategy of a spousal catch-up contribution. One thing we didn't hit, guys, is it worth it? Opening up a separate account just for your spouse to contribute $1,000? Yes. Yes, it is. It does create complexity, and you want to be aware of the drag of all the financial complexity on your overall financial life. But I would do it. I would do this. All right. Second creative funding strategy also has a drag, and it's just a letdown. It is, because it sounds way like it's going to be really great, and then they've taken all the goodness out of it, and that is contributing or transferring money from your IRA to your HSA. You can only do this once in your life. You are limited in how much you can transfer, i.e. up to that year's contribution limit, and then that counts towards your contribution for that year or the amount that you can put in. So if you transfer money from your IRA, you're not able to also contribute. So when would you do this? When would you not? I would not do it when you have the means to make the contribution and get the deduction.
Mm-hmm. Or you're even counting on that deduction to help lower your overall taxable income. You might be in the college funding years or something, and you're on the brink of being able to benefit from some financial aid, let's say. Or if you're on the brink of jumping into a higher tax bracket or losing some tax credits because your income goes just a little bit too high. If you've got a year where you do this transfer from your IRA to the HSA, then you can no longer contribute out of your paycheck or a lump sum amount, and no longer that year reduce your taxable income like you normally would have. So you might accidentally put yourself in a position where the tax consequences are kind of painful.
So I'm thinking of 3 scenarios where it maybe would make sense. You're right at the end of your career, and you're looking at, okay, I've only got a limited number of paychecks left, and I've got a lot of financial opportunities. And, maybe you're in the spot where we want to build up as much cash as possible, and we're going to live on some cash, or we've got a big ticket expense right at the beginning of retirement, and I want to build up some cash. And therefore, I would like the tax deduction, but I don't really need it because I'm close to retiring. And I want to build up cash as opposed to, throw it downstream and throw it in an HSA. But I have the ability to fund an HSA. I think that is one option right at the end of your career. Mm-hmm. I think that's a scenario. And my guess is most people don't think about it.
The advantage of waiting until at least past age 55 is that now you can contribute an extra $1,000 when you do this transfer.
Yeah,
right?
A little bit
so
more.
It's a little bit bigger bucket for you.
Yeah. I think on the other bookend, I think a lot of people don't use this opportunity early in their career because they're not aware of it. And they also think, well, I can only do this once in my lifetime. But when you're early in your career, you might not have the cash flow to max out your contribution. And you might have maybe an IRA from an old 401k. And so technically you could shift dollars from your IRA into that HSA, but you just say, nah, I'm not going to do it. And so I think that's the second. And then the third is a medical crisis, mm-hmm. where all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of out-of-pocket medical expenses, and you don't have the cash to get the money into your HSA yet.
That has to be the one that Congress had in mind, right? That's the whole reason that they introduced this. And it's you hear us saying, boy, our certified financial planner minds are driven crazy by the fact that there's a strategy here and we can't really use it in a way that we would want to with our clients because of the limitations that have been placed. But the situation I'm sure that Congress had in mind was someone who needs to pay for some medical expenses, doesn't have the money to fund their HSA that year, and has a pool of money built up in an IRA somewhere. And this is a way essentially to get the money out of the IRA into a place where they can use it for the medical expenses and pay no tax in between.
And pay no penalty either because maybe they're under age 59 and a half.
Right. So it's a solution to a very specific problem when we want it to be a strategy, right?
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
But my guess is it applies in that very specific situation more often than it's used. So hopefully this helps you whether you find yourself in that unfortunate scenario or someone or a family member is going through that as well. So, all right. The third advanced funding strategy with your HSA. And I'm going to tell you, this strategy is much less sophisticated than the last couple, okay? It's not as technical. However, we help people with this all the time from during tax season, from the early part of February until April 15. We are pointing this thing out. I'm going to say collectively across all financial professionals at KFG, we point this out once a day at least during tax season. From beginning of February to the end of March, we point this out. And what is it? It is contributing to your HSA up until your tax filing deadline. So why is that even a strategy to point out? It's so simple. Why is it even something to talk about?
Well, because if people haven't used their entire coupon, if you will, so if you get to the end of this year, and I actually was just looking at mine, and this year I turned the magic 50. I've already turned 55. So I can do the $1,000 catch-up. Now, that's a lot of money for ketchup, but I'm telling you. So when you look at this, you say, okay, what can I do? I can do $78.50 because I've got the family plan plus another $1,000. Well,
$77.50, right?
Yeah,
$77.50.
I think that's what I said. And so when you look at that and you say, all right, well, I just looked and I've been on autopilot at $600 a month. Well, it wasn't long ago when $7,200 was the right amount that I could get in. So now I have to do an extra $650. Did I do that wrong?
You can't do math.
I can't
on the
do
radio.
math on the
Here,
radio.
hold my coffee.
Yeah, no.
So,
I think you're right. So it's actually I'm off by $100. I spend the rest of the day off by $100 because it's $38.50 and $77.50.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So anyways, so I got to put some extra money in to get caught up. Now, I could do that as I go, or I can do that before April 15th. And this is where when you look, how much, is there any room for improvement before I hit the file my taxes button? And really, this is what you want to be looking at with your tax planner. And because your tax preparer likely isn't going to be looking at these strategies.
Oh my goodness!
Right,
no.
They want to get that tax return done and off their desk and filed and moving on. Right?
Because it is done. It's done. Just sign this
The
thing
year's
and let's
over.
go.
Right.
Here's your refund, and that's it, right? As opposed to, hey, did you notice you only contributed $3,000 total to your HSA? Well, yeah, that's, my company put in $1,500, and I figured I'd put in $1,500. I'm not going to have that, more than that in medical expenses this year. No, I know, but you could actually contribute more and get a tax benefit this, before we file this return. Yeah. And here's what I love about it is you can look and say, as it stands right now, you're getting about a $2,000 refund. If you maxed out your HSA contribution, yes, you'd probably need to use some of that refund to make your HSA contribution, but your refund, instead of being $2,000, would be, I don't know, $2,500 or $2,700, something like that. So you can enhance your refund by pledging, I will do this, and then you receive your refund, and that's the money you throw in your HSA.
That's exactly right. You may have been going through the whole calendar year not able to max out the HSA because cash flow was tight. You were concerned about some other things coming up. Maybe you have other goals that you're trying to achieve. And then all of a sudden you get to tax time and you realize, oh, I'm getting a bigger refund than I thought. And that refund can be, as you said, what funds this bigger refund. You can get more tax savings by just using your tax refund a little bit better.
Because what Kevin just referenced, a lot of us find ourselves in that situation where I've been funding on autopilot this tax shelter, and just over a couple of years, they've changed the contribution limit. So I was max funding it, and now I'm coming up a little bit short. And so seeing that on your tax return before you file your return gives you a chance, gives you an opportunity to improve your tax situation, have more dollars tax sheltered for future medical expenses. So make sure you catch that. There's one more advanced funding creative strategy with the HSA. We're going to hit that more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Had checked myself.
Yeah.
So show over, or we got one more segment? One more segment. All right.
Okay, what do we want to make sure we hit in the last segment?
Shoebox.
Okay.
Only that.
That's it?
Yes.
Shoebox.
Wow.
So I don't know if that takes the full time. My guess is it does. If it doesn't, we can get into questions, but that's technical enough. And what we've talked about is unique enough that we can circle back and just talk through situations that you're in, that what seasons of life or what circumstances would you be in where these ideas could make sense. So,
Do you think we'll have time to get into questions?
Well, that's your favorite joke, isn't it? Man. Do we have a dad joke compilation going yet? That one needs
You just
to be on
need the
there.
mute button, dude. That's all you need.
Or I just like to see how many times he uses that joke throughout a year.
yeah.
I was thinking you guys wouldn't remember, and Mike would try and answer the question.
So, Easton did get me the other day. And it was because I was distracted, okay? I'm just going to put that out there. Because I've heard the kids do this a gazillion times. Okay, Dad, repeat after me. Okay, buddy, I'll repeat after you. I keep making dinner and whatever. He's like, what color is the sky? Like, blue. He's like, Dad. They are all looking at me. And I'm like, what? I'm making food. And he's like, you're supposed to repeat after me, not answer the question. So they're starting dad jokes early, age 5. So
Have you seen the 5
That
minutes
actually
of dad
hurts.
jokes on a doc?
no.
It's like a YouTube channel or something. And they're just sitting there drinking coffee or whatever and just going back and forth, seeing who cracks first, sharing their dad jokes. And man, they get me pretty good sometimes, I'll admit.
All right. I got to check that out.
Yeah. Do it without laughing.
All right.
I dare you.
Okay, 4th segment, Land on the Plane. Here we go. Shoebox. All right. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFC studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast, so if you're into that, and I told you a few episodes ago, I'm into one right now. I turned onto it from Kevin. Founders. It's a crazy concept. A individual reads autobiographies or biographies and then talks about them. And I just, when you told me that, I'm like, that's dumb. I'm just going to read the book. It's good. It's good. So if you're into the podcast game,
Yeah, I mean, having a one-sided conversation with the greatest founders in the history of the world.
it's pretty awesome. So check that out. But also check out the Wise Money Show while you're there. Subscribe to it as well, and rate the show. We appreciate that. All right. So we're talking about advanced funding strategies with the HSA. We've shared the needlessly confusing catch-up contribution. We've shared the IRA to HSA contribution, which should be really sweet, and it's not. And then also the less sophisticated, but oh my goodness, wildly applicable, contributing to your HSA throughout the year, but then making sure you apply your full contribution, the maximum contribution, up until your tax filing deadline. This last one isn't necessarily a funding strategy per se, but more so a different approach to your HSA that I think will compel more people to fund their HSA to the maximum or to its full potential. And that is using your HSA, what I guess we would call it the shoebox method. So Kevin, what is that?
So the shoebox method is I am accumulating all of my medical expenses, the receipts for those expenses, qualified expenses, in a shoebox. Now, your shoebox could be an Excel spreadsheet. It could be a file folder. It could be whatever. You do administratively want to have an operating system that allows for this, and you want to have buy-in from the team or whoever would be spending money on qualified medical expenses. But the confusing thing is typically you think if I'm going to have an expense, I need to offset that expense in the current year. So think 529. I can't pull money out of my 529 plan for a qualified education expense unless it was incurred in that calendar year. So in the year in which the expense was incurred, I have to pull the money out of the 529. I have to match those up, the expense with the distribution from my 529 plan. The HSA works completely different. It's the exact opposite. You basically can accumulate those expenses over your lifetime, and then at some point in time in the future, you can pull a a meaningful chunk of money out. So just, I know we're not supposed to do math on the radio, but if you, over your lifetime, if you accumulated $120,000 of HSA money, because you said, hey, I'm putting the money in and we're paying for stuff out of cash flow. So I'm putting that in, enjoying the triple threat, or the triple tax deduction, right? And so at the end of my lifetime, I've got $120,000 of medical expenses that I have accumulated. I've got $120,000 in my HSA account. I can pull all of my HSA account out in 1 year and wipe out those expenses.
Yeah. Okay. So that may be confusing enough, and it's probably worth unpacking just a little bit more here, because recognize this. Maybe you already understand this of an HSA. The purpose of a health savings account is to provide a place for you to accumulate money that you're going to use to pay medical bills. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the advantage to you of using this tool instead of just your bank account, your checking account, or anything like that, is this one has some pretty important tax benefits to it. Okay. Some tax sheltering. The cool thing is that the HSA can be used a couple different ways. And that is, you can use it to fund the medical expenses that you incur throughout the year. You know, as you go to the doctor, as you go to the dentist, the eye doctor, whatever, as you have these qualified medical expenses, you can use the HSA to pay those bills if you want to. And if that's the case, then you're essentially using it like all the other bank accounts that you're used to using. And it's a transactional type of an account. It's just, helping to cover the expenses right now, real time. The other option, though, is to not use the HSA for today's expenses or not reimburse yourself for today's expenses. You can do that down the road. And if you postpone the time when you're going to draw off of this account, you can leave the money in the account and let it grow. And so now all of a sudden, instead of being a transactional account, it can be an investment account. Mm-hmm. It can be a vehicle that behaves an awful lot like your IRA or your Roth IRA or your 401k. You're invested in mutual funds and things that are growth oriented that can allow that pool of money to be much larger out in the future. Kevin was saying 120 grand you could have accumulated by the end of your working career, let's say. Could be more, could be less. But the point is that it is growing because it's not being taxed along the way. It's a tax shelter. And when you pull the money out, whether it's in retirement or in the year that you threw the money in, either time, as long as it's coming out to cover medical expenses, qualified medical expenses, it comes out tax-free. And the uniqueness of this plan, of this health savings account, is that the medical expenses don't have to happen in the same year that you pull the distributions. Or in other words, you can reimburse yourself years after the fact if you want to.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. It's unlike anything else we've ever seen, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you could leave the money in the account, let it grow tax-free, and eventually reimburse yourself down the road allows you to accumulate money faster in this type of an account than you ever would in a bank account or something else.
So here's just a real quick example, because Cindy and I are doing this, and it wasn't easy because you're still going to have medical expenses. You still have a high deductible health plan that you've got to come up with the out-of-pocket expenses, and so it's discipline.
That's right.
For
the doctor's not willing to wait 3 decades to get paid back, right? You have to be able to still pay the medical expenses out of other pockets.
So
right?
Here's an example. Carrington sprained her ankle on the 4th of July, and she plays volleyball and softball, and so you know what? When she did it, she rolled her ankle, and she was helping out Little Easton's baseball practice. And she rolled it, and I'm over working with some other kids, and she walks over. I'm telling you guys, she looked like she was going to pass out. She looked like she broke her leg. Ugh. And I didn't see what happened. And so she looks like she's going to throw up or pass out. And I said, go to mom, go to the hospital. And they didn't. And thankfully they didn't. But we took her the next day, happened to be 4th of July, and it was a high sprain. And so thankfully it wasn't worse. But X-ray and doctor visit, $150. Now, I've got that $150 in my HSA, and I already contributed the $150. I got the tax benefit. I could pull the $150 out and cover it. Okay. Or I could leave that 150 in there in the HSA and have it invested. And yes, there's a short-term risk that 150 drops to $75 because it's invested. But leaving it invested for a long enough time and being patient and not overreacting with emotions and all that 150 hopefully will grow to $300 10 years from now.
$600.
And $600 2 decades from now. At that time, I'm 65, and now I've got $600, and sure, I can pull out $150 and reimburse myself for that X-ray and doctor visit that we did in the morning on 4th of July, right? And so that has the you leverage the power of compound growth and compound interest with your HSA dollars.
And the reason it's called a shoebox method is because you're keeping track of those trips to the doctor's office because of a sprained ankle or the other expenses along the way. You're accumulating them so that when you get out there to retirement or some date in the future and you're ready to finally take the withdrawal to reimburse yourself, you know how much you're allowed to withdraw. You've got documentation, and you can prove that you're eligible.
So lastly here, you might say, well, gosh, if it grows that much, I'm going to outgrow my medical expenses. Well, there's good news. Number one, I think there will always be medical expenses. That's the one. But two, after age 65, you can withdraw money from your HSA, and if it's not for a medical expense, no problem. You just have to pay tax on that money. It's not penalized. Unlike everything else, if you don't use it for its intended purpose, it's taxed and penalized. With an HSA, once you turn 65, it's treated just like an IRA, but with the extra benefit of if you draw it out to cover medical expenses or reimburse for qualified medical expenses, it comes out tax-free. Big point here. Not to go out and execute these complicated strategies by yourself, but work with your CFP. Make sure that you're using the HSA to optimize your financial plan, and where these creative strategies may work with your CFP to apply them. All right, that's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Corhorn, all of us at KFG, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Corhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Corhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.